It's time for the chip race.
For strategy this week, we welcome back the 2006 Online Player of the Year, the winner of 32 live tournaments, including the 2016 Aussie Millions main event and the $2,500 WSOP bracelet event in 2019. He is, of course, Ari Engel. Ari, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, David. Hi, Dara. Also, thanks for having me, guys.
Great to have you back, Ari.
Well, to the hand, it comes from the very beginning of your victorious WSOP final table, and it's an unusual hand for us to cover because there is just one decision point. The final table is tough enough and includes David Baker, Josh Aria, Ben Keyline, and Uruguayan online beast Pablo Malongo, El Malongo 4, for those of you who know his online name. He is a Scoop and a Sunday Million title. Ari, how did you size up these villains?
So I came in with a long history of failure at the World Series. This was my 15th summer going to the World Series in various ways. Like, towards the beginning, I would only play an event or two. And then towards the end, I would just play absolutely everything. I'd never had a top 9 finish at the World Series. It was just this unbelievable, mental hurdle, craziness, variance, something. I don't even know what was going on. So I had a lot of mental hangups coming in. Of course, playing against a lot of well-known players. I don't think I knew necessarily Milongo at the time, but I quickly was able to pick up that he was an animal by the way he was playing, and super impressed with him. And then a lot of those American pros I had played with. Well, the one key point in this tournament for me was that I got it in behind 16 times. Of course, this is a strategy segment. We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually played this tournament as well, and I remember it being a particularly tough field.
This was a freeze out, though. So
yeah.
In that sense, I guess balanced out a little bit of the toughness.
Well, Dara, it's probably not a spoiler to say right now that this is going to be a hand where ICM plays a huge factor. The chips on the final table are spread as follows. Wilbur Hoffman is chippy with 3.2 million. Pablo is second with 2.5 million. Ari, you're in third with 2.3 million. Try and Win has 2 million. Ben Keyline has 1.7 million. Aria and Bakes both have about 1 million. Then the two shorties have 600k and 400k. What implications does that have in general for Ari here, and how would you be strategizing based on those implications?
Yeah, obviously ICM is huge, particularly with the shorties being there. ICM is a tricky one because there's a lot of value to still opening because people have to fold more pre-flop, but you have to call off so tight that you'll be opening quite a wide range and there's very little that you can defend to a lot of shoves. It's almost like a game of chicken where the first guy who gets his chips in pre-flop forces the other person to fold huge chunks of the range that they wouldn't normally even consider folding.
Well, to the hand itself, the blinds are 25, 50k with a 50k big blind ante. Josh Aria has the button. You are under the gun too, and Ari, you open to 125k with pocket jacks. Right behind you, Ben Keyline playing 1.685 million, approximately 34 big blinds, just shoves. Action folds back to you, and well, you go deep into the tank. What was your read on Keyline? How ICM aware do you think he is, and how much do you think he was prioritizing laddering?
Me and Ben Keyline have been playing live tournaments for probably close to 10 years. And yet, I don't know a lot of his tendencies and stuff like that. I just kind of know he's a professional. He's got to be pretty decent. I look at him as a winning player, as a longtime regular. This, of course, is like a huge stage. I mean, we're playing for a bracelet. It's a $2,500 buy-in with close to 1,000 entries. So it's out of our bankroll for everybody, I would assume. We're all playing in this uncomfortable place, and the stakes are super, super high. So this situation with what the hell does he have? So a couple of hands before this at the final table, I had opened in later position and he had 3-bet. I think I opened cutoff and he 3-bet button and I folded, and those were more normal sizes. But here, it's like he shoves 34 blinds. It's such a weird, huge shove. Just like Dara mentioned to begin with, I mean, it's one of those spots where if there's no ICM, I beat him into the pot. There's nothing to talk about. I haven't folded jacks in 37 years. But in this spot now, this is going to be the vast majority of my stack. I'm in a comfortable spot to at least not get 9th, 8th, 7th kind of situation. And, when you lose chips, the chips you lose are more valuable than the chips you're getting. The devastation of losing here and getting 9th X percentage of the time would be really bad for our long run equity.
So, Dara, as Ari's alluded to there, if he calls and he's right, and he holds, or is wrong and gets there, I guess, too, he has 4 million and an excellent opportunity to lean on his stablemates and increase his chances of winning. On the flip side, though, if he's right but doesn't hold, or if he's wrong and his opponent holds, he's going to be the short stack with 600k. How raw filthy does this make this spot?
I mean, it makes it absolutely filthy. I heard Ari talking recently about how there was this sort of play for the win mentality years ago, and that tended to just express itself as people thought you take these gambling spots to try and get a big stack, then you pound on everyone, and that's how you win tournaments. But spoiler alert, Ari ended up folding here and still won the tournament. I mean, when I read this hand first, I thought in my mind, this feels like it's almost always ace king in Ben's seat. He doesn't want to induce with it. He doesn't know what else to do with it. And it's actually not a bad strategy in a big ICM situation where you really don't want to induce. The ICM is huge for Ben as well. So just sticking it in and getting Ari to fold a lot of hands that he's flipping against is a very good result. But it's hard to range him. Is he doing this with maybe hands that were in incredible shape against as well? Like, does he have tens and he thinks this is what he's supposed to do? I mean, I put this through a pre-flop solver, and the solver kind of recognizes that in Ben's seat, you really don't want to get called. So like, you clearly wouldn't do this with aces because it would be an incredible waste of aces. But the solver would actually do this with kings. So the solver obviously feels there's enough value to folding out ace-x hands, even with kings. And then the rest of the hand that it populates the range with are really just blocker type hands. There's some interesting stuff in there like king-jack suited, queen-jack suited, where you're kind of blocking the hands that you're afraid of running into. Because I saw this when we were running a lot of sims for Poker Satellite Strategy. When ICM is huge, like it is on the bubble of a satellite, really it's far more important to block calling ranges than to actually have a legit hand in a lot of spots. So in Ben's seat, it's kind of just important he doesn't get called more than anything else. And then he needs to have a super strong hand in there like kings to stop you from calling with impunity.
Well, Dara, it's interesting that you say that, because when Ari and I spoke about this before the recording, I said to him, I don't think he has aces or kings here, feeling similar to you there, that it would be a waste, although I would have included kings in that. But Ari, you immediately expressed the fear that he could actually be leveling you, and he might be the type of guy who would do this with aces or kings, figuring that you would snap off tens or jacks.
And kind of like Dara said, the solver does want you to shove kings. So, some sort of level, some sort of maybe scared money. Definitely, I found like on these huge stages, it's easy to get into your own head a little bit and just be a little bit off. And all of a sudden, the execution just looks ridiculous.
So, Dara, you mentioned they're using the solver. What did the solver actually do in this spot?
Well, obviously, Ari's hand is a slam dunk open. And then in Ben's seat, the solver splits its range between flats, normal 3-bets, and shoves. The normal 3-bet range is maybe the most interesting because that's the one that has aces in it. It also has ace-king suited in it, which is kind of interesting because you might think, well, we don't want to induce with ace-king suited either. And then it picks stuff like ace-jack off as the light part of the range that it's just going to fold to further aggression. But it does put kings then into the shove range. Ace-king off goes in there as well, but it also populates in a lot of suited kings, actually, even stuff as weak as king 7 suited, king 5 suited with some frequency.
Oh, it's amazing. People trying to say that solver play leads to boring ABC styles and stuff like that. No one would have shoved king 7 suited there before. So no one in the history of the world, we would call them the most creative player in the world. That's amazing. That's sweet. I can now justify a whole bunch more plays that I accidentally did that were good.
Yeah, I remember seeing Timex do these types of plays, and loads of people who watched telling me, like, has he lost his mind here? But he'd clearly done the work with the solvers as well. And then when it comes back on Ari, I mean, against that wide of a shoving range that includes some stuff like king 5 suited, we're obviously supposed to call off jacks. Tens is the bottom of the range, tens plus an ace king. But I mean, that's against somebody playing that loose of a shoving range. I think in the real world, it's extremely unlikely Ben was shoving stuff like king 5 suited.
Of course, but also maybe the kings would also come up. So you can maybe take off some from the bottom, but also potentially some from the top. I don't want you guys to make me feel good about this fold. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, if his range is, let's say, properly balanced between the super strong kings, the strong ace king as well, and then the rest is just kind of like, for example, one of the interesting hands he's supposed to shove all of the time is queen jack suited, because if your calling range starts at tens, then queen jack suited blocks your calling range pretty significantly.
Wow. The future of poker tournaments does have some excitement to it still.
Yeah, Doug Polk talks about this a lot in his video about how like ICM is often perceived as just a way where people justify making really nitty folds, but you can flip it around as well. And if people are forced to make those folds, then that's what allows you to throw in something like a king 7 suited or a queen jack suited as a shove in this spot.
Well, a pretty sick situation. You did find the fold in the end, and as Dara said, you went on to win the tournament. Did you ever get to find out what he had?
So while the tournament was still going on, for what that's worth, maybe like 25 minutes later, we're friends and we were talking away from the table, and he told me he had 9. But, you know, the tournament was still going on. There's some gamesmanship there. If I had it, you know, if I had a guess, I would guess he probably did have 9, but who knows? I wouldn't consider that really like foul play, lying about your hand, whatever. When a poker player tells me their hand, you know, if we're at the table, I lie plenty of times about the hand, and I think that's pretty normal. But like this was away from the table, kind of. We can analyze his truth-telling away from the table. But I think with all the considerations and actual in-practice range that I would have to assign X percentage for this hand, X percentage for this hand, I thought it was a tough spot, interesting spot. It still feels interesting to me. I'm still not 100% sure what to do. Part of the beauty of this great game is, you know, guesstimating these tough spots. And even with all the software assistance and stuff like that, it still feels like there's a lot of room for analysis.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way to play 9s for sure, because, I mean, 9s works fine as a flat. Shoving is just kind of a shove and hope.
It would be somewhere along the lines of a more, in my mind, a more scared money player.
Yeah.
But like, it's a $2,500 buy in final table. The idea that the player is a little scared money in that spot is very, very standard. And I think the majority of players, even professionals, unless you have a reason to believe that they're in this super strong mental state and very, very strong strategically, I think most people would be playing some version of scared money at the final table.
Well, I'm glad this one worked out for you either way. If you had the 9s, okay, maybe that was a good spot and you missed out on that, but it worked out fine in the end. So I'm happy to see that, and I was happy to see the bracelet go on your wrist. Ari, this has been a really interesting hand. I was kind of worried whether a 1 decision point hand could justify an entire segment. We've more than covered it from every angle. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Great to talk to you guys. Be well.
Thanks, Ari.